Hey everybody. Mathematics is a language. That's a statement, not a prompt for debate. Though the symbols are mostly a mix of ancient Arabic and Greek, and in my class, we mostly speak English, et parfois français quand il est nécessaire pour les étudiants, it really is entirely its own language. It has meaning, syntax, and importantly, grammar. A large part of early mathematics is just learning your basic vocabulary and a few simple sentences. Now, by the time we get to grade 6, we start to work in some more advanced grammar as well. Usually I deal with grade 5 math here, that being what I actually teach, but I've had a request from some students that I talk about this grade 6 concept, so I will. A big shift in grade 6 is that for the first time ever, we start seeing problems that have multiple steps. Things like this. Now, this is very confusing for a student who's new to this. Even if I'm taking the time to write this out in the most organized way possible, it's still a lot. The thing is, we already intuitively understand the idea behind solving this kind of problem, we just don't often put that understanding into words. We do it all the time when we're speaking, especially English. Consider this. What sounds better? A green old big truck, or a big old green truck? English, and other languages too, actually have a specific order that we need to follow for adjectives we use when we describe something. It goes number, size, age, shape, color. If we put those descriptors in any other order, it just sounds wrong. Many of us have never had this explained to us, but if we hear a description that doesn't follow that order, we know something's off. Now, math has a similar set of rules. When we're presented with a large problem that has a bunch of operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, in it, there's an order to each of those operations that we have to solve or it comes out wrong. If we follow that order, our math is grammatically correct. And if we don't, what we get doesn't make sense. So what is the grammar here? Well, the mnemonic we use in math is BEDMAS, or sometimes BEMDAS. Though I prefer the former because it just feels better for me to say. What it stands for is brackets, exponents, divide and multiply, add and subtract. This tells us the order that we need to approach all of these steps in. Let's take a look at a problem that includes all of these things at once so that we can break them down. Now, fair warning, this is much harder than anything you'll see in grade 6, but we're still going to use it as an example. Now, this is a lot to look at, but it's not actually that bad when we take it step by step using BEDMAS. Our first step in using this grammar is to solve everything that's in brackets. That's the B. So let's do this. We have 5 plus 3 in one set of brackets and 7 minus 2 in another. Let's solve both of those, leave the brackets there for clarity, and see what the problem looks like now. This is already looking much nicer. Still a few steps to go though. Next, we go on to E, which stands for exponents. Now, exponents is already a new idea for grade 6, so this one can be a whole lot all at once. An exponent is that little number next to the 5 that we have in brackets now. The short version is that it means that whatever comes after gets multiplied by itself a number of times. If it's a 2, that means squared. 5 times 5. 2 of them. If it were a 3, it would mean 5 times 5 times 5. 3 of them. A 4 is 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, etc. This one's a 2, so it's very easy. To solve this exponent, I take the 5 in brackets and multiply by itself. 5 times 5 is 25. Now, the exponents are gone. So we can go on to the operations that my grade 5s would already be pretty comfortable with. Divide, multiply, add, and subtract. Now, if you have a pretty good understanding of these operations, you may realize that because of the way they work, the order that we multiply and divide in at this time doesn't actually matter. We could solve either the multiplication or the division part of this problem first, as long as we make sure that we do both of those before we add or subtract. As long as you're consistent with what you do, you're good. My own personal preference is to divide first, so let's do that. 8 divided by 2 is 4, so we can replace the division part of this with a 4. Now we multiply. For those unclear on this, we don't always need to use a small x to mean multiply. Sometimes it's enough for us to just write the numbers next to each other. That 3 next to the 25 in brackets just means 3 times 25. That makes 75. So let's replace the multiplication question here with that 75. Well, going one step at a time, we can see that this huge problem eventually just breaks down to 4 plus 75. And that's a much easier problem. 4 plus 75 is 79, so we're good to go. That whole giant expression just means 79. Now again, this is much harder than you'll see in grade 6, but it's worth looking at because it includes everything. Let's go back and look at that first expression from earlier that you might actually see at that stage. Let's check and see what we have. Remember, BEDMAS, BEDMAS, brackets. We've got those, so let's solve them. 5 plus 4 is 9. Exponents. Not in this problem, so we move on. Divide. Again, nope, move on. Multiply. Yeah, we have one of those. All right, 2 times 9 is 18. Perfect. Add or subtract? No, we're done here. Written like this, 2 times 5 plus 4 in brackets is just 18. Easy. Now, finally, I want to address those problems that love to make their way across social media. You know the ones. 99% of people will get this wrong. That's because they aren't written properly. Let's look at the same problem from before in that way. Now, the thing to take issue with here is that it looks like garbage to a mathematician. It's technically solvable, and we'll do it here, but when I look at this, it's like I'm reading a sentence full of spelling errors. Yeah, I can understand it, but it's not following convention and it looks terrible to me. People fight over these problems because they're unclear. Some people solve 2 times 5 first and get 14, while others solve 5 plus 4 first and get 18. Just to keep things organized, a mathematician would usually write brackets around whichever of the two they'd like you to solve first, so that you know clearly when you look at the question. If they don't, though, if they're sloppy, if they're full of spelling errors, we jump back to BEDMAS. There are no brackets or exponents in this problem, so we go straight to divide and multiply, then add and subtract. For this problem, that means we solve the multiplication before the addition. 2 times 5 goes first, making it 10. Then we add 4 to get 14. Done. And that's it for today. I hope that for all of my language-strong students, this analogy to grammar makes sense for you. Math is a wonderful language, and one of the only truly universal languages in the world, and treating it in other ways really does a disservice to it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I feel like I should head off to bed. Mass to be getting late. Peace.